right, welcome to the July 26th special meeting of the Police and Fire Commission for the city of Fitchburg, and I would like to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of minutes from July 21st. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? And are there any questions or concerns or comments from the commission? Rosa?
The only concern that I addressed shortly before the meeting was regarding the decision on the finalists that we took a vote, and it's not reflected in the minutes, but I was informed or advised that we cannot do that, or that Sarah will look into that to see if that's possible to be included or not. Because we took a vote on the 4 finalists, and I'm interested in reflecting my vote for that.
Sure that we can note that.
So I guess I'm not quite following.
So
Was
we
it
were
not a unanimous vote at the time?
It wasn't. So Rosa did not agree with all 4 finalists moving forward. She only agreed to 3, and that was in closed session. But because the consensus was that those were the 4, I didn't reflect that in the minutes. So
you did not?
I need to talk to our city attorney and just make sure I can reflect that. I would think so, but I will double check.
Okay.
But all of that is closed session.
Exactly.
No
All of that's in
different
closed
than any
session.
other closed session discussion we've ever had or any governmental body has. So there's an answer for that. That's just the law. And then there's really, I don't think, a lot of options.
Exactly. Yep.
Just so that for my own understanding, if you can just refresh me with the law and the code, whatever, you can do it,
Yep.
too, so that I have it very clear.
Absolutely. I'll send you more information on closed session and what we can take, when we can take minutes, or if we take minutes. We don't traditionally take minutes in closed session.
Just specifically when we take votes and
Exactly.
they're not unanimous.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. The minutes or concerns? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes from July 21st, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All nays? And the minutes are approved. Next order of business is public appearance and non-agenda items, or 4 non-agenda items. Do we have any public appearances? We have a few folks, but they don't want to make comments, okay. Next order of business is discussion of PSE complaint to the commission.
Right, before we get into that, I do have a non-agenda item to discuss. So we did tape the finalist presentations for last week, and all of them were great, except one. We had a few technical difficulties. So the very beginning of his presentation is cut off, and the very ending. So if you look at all 4 presentations, if looking at fairness and making sure we show the full presentation for everyone else, but we don't for this individual, the question for the commission is, do we want to share the presentations publicly since we were experiencing that technical difficulty for the one? The alternative, we could trim each of the videos to where they actually start talking about proactive policing. And so then it's an even playing field, so to speak. So then it's just that part of the presentation. The presentations do give a lot of value. It's for the public to be able to see what they had to say about Fitchburg specifically too. So just wanted to put that out to the commission. And Rosa, you had a chance to actually watch the presentations.
It's noticeable that there's something missing in that one. I have to say that I still feel the same way. Some things were reinforced of what I was thinking, but it does make a little bit of a difference. I don't know. I mean, I would love for the public to be able to see them if they want to, but.
And I guess, are you saying that it makes a difference for the one person that had the technical difficulties versus the other three?
Yeah, there's something lacking in there that you can see that there was, a technical issue. But as far as me being able to evaluate and see if I concur with my feelings and my decisions prior to watching them, it did not change the outcome of how I felt.
Okay.
Other commissioners?
Good. I think in all fairness that we should give everybody the same amount of time and I don't think it would be fair because I was able to watch a couple of them. The introductions were impactful, and that would persuade me if I didn't hear this one candidate's introduction. And if that's the easiest way to do it is just to fast forward to that part and we miss the introduction, I think the citizens would still appreciate seeing them and giving everybody a fair opportunity for it.
Other commissioners have an opinion on that? Ron? No? I certainly think that we want them out and to have people see them. And it seems that, like what you were saying, it seems very reasonable that they're going to see the majority of the presentation if you do trim that down, but then it'll be more sort of even between all of them. I do like that idea. Okay? So we should probably vote on that. Is everybody the motion before us is to trim the presentations down to make sure that the one that had technical difficulties, we would reduce down both sides of that to make sure all the presentations had equal time and covered equal subject matter. All in favor of that? Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And the nays, and we passed. Thank you for bringing that up, because it's important. Because we had decided previously that we wanted that information out there, obviously, but didn't foresee that hiccup. Next agenda item is discussion of PFC complaint to the commission.
Yeah, so our city attorney gave us some guidance already on this complaint. So we had a PFC complaint submitted to us on June 30th, 21 by one of our lieutenants in the police department. And the question was, the complaint is regarding our former police chief. And so since our police chief is now our city administrator and no longer in that role, what type of jurisdiction does our, what jurisdiction does the PFC have over this complaint? I mean, can you issue discipline? There's no termination, so to speak, because the chief isn't in the role any longer. So our city attorney drafted some information basically giving her staff recommendation as far as what you could do tonight. I'm just going to read this off. I understand that a member of the Fitchburg Police Department has filed a PFC complaint against former Police Chief Brecklin related to an internal investigation conducted by the police department against the complainant. Without considering the substance of the complaint, it is my opinion that because Chief Brecklin is no longer police chief, nor a member of the police department, having resigned earlier this month, the PFC does not have authority to discipline or demote him, and as such, this complaint is essentially outside the scope of the oversight of the PFC. As such, I do not believe a hearing on this complaint would be necessary or appropriate.
Rosa, you said you had questions or thoughts on it?
I do. And I'm not going into necessarily the merits of the complaint. I understand that the Equal Rights Commission was involved and they dismissed basically the complaint. My quick concern is a matter of procedure. This complaint came in June 30th. I don't know if the precedent here was advised, and I don't know if that's something that happens right away within a few days. But there was some screening done, I'm assuming, and it didn't come to the commission right away. My question is, right now we don't have jurisdiction in the sense that he's no longer the chief. But does that mean that there was no merit to the issue? We have an employee that is feeling unheard to some degree. And I just feel that, and maybe I'm wrong in terms of procedure, that we didn't get the opportunity to look at that and make that decision ourselves. That's my my reaction to that item.
Yeah, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, so that we received the complaint on June 30th. I forwarded over to Jeff on July 8th, I believe is the date. Before that, I actually forwarded over to our city attorney and our employment attorney. We don't get a lot of complaints to the PFC, so we wanted to make sure, what do we do in this case, knowing that our chief was actually not going to be our chief any longer. He was actually on vacation during that time and returning to the administrator role. So then getting it to Jeff on the 8th. So at that point, then it was a matter of, we know we want to get this on the agenda. We couldn't get it on the July agenda because we already had a packed schedule, but then we were looking at the special meeting to get it on. So we want to make sure we try to get these handled within 30 days of receiving them. So that's just a kind of a process timeline for you.
Yeah, and I guess it's, go ahead.
Just one question, and maybe you can clarify that for me. If that would have been a valid complaint, and the chief, no longer in the department, we dismiss that complaint? If it would have been valid? I'm just hypothetical.
Well, we don't even know if it's valid or not, right? I mean, we're not talking about the substance of the actual claim. We're just trying to figure out, what does the PFC do with it? Do we, since he's not in the role anymore, does it make sense to even keep moving on with it?
So, yeah, so I read through through our bylaws and then, and subsequently the statute, and I am not an attorney, so don't hold me to this. But through reading those things, the preliminary evaluation of this by the PFC and the hearing needs to happen 10 days after the complaint is issued, and then between then and 30 days post. I guess my 2 cents is that because it was received on June 30th, and the 10th, he was no longer going to be the chief essentially on the 12th, and that was over the course of a weekend. Theoretically anyways, we could have had a meeting that weekend to discuss it, but it just didn't, and I got it on the 8th. It didn't seem like a practical matter that we could really take up within that time frame. I will say this, I think that we should get complaints as soon as we get them within the city. The PFC in totality should get that complaint. And I guess I don't know all the legal ramifications of that exactly, meaning I don't know why the city attorney needed to evaluate it, but it seems to me that it's a complaint process for the PFC and that we should get those right away.
Yep.
So that we can make a determination on that. And I don't know that it mattered in this case because of that timeline, but I think that we should get them immediately.
Well, she made the determination to dismiss the complaint, which I'm assuming is that in her right?
So I dismiss the
Oh, no, the city attorney.
it's her staff recommendation, just based on the timing, without looking at the substance of the claim.
I do have a question. So it was, the EEOC had already taken a look at this, and they got back that fast?
So it was a process. So it was last year that something
Okay.
they went through, and he had
Right.
submitted something, and then we received results back.
And I think that would be where we would want to know as the PFC is if there's something that's filed with the EEOC, I think we would want to know to be a part of it, because it takes a long time. So this happened a while ago, whatever it was, and I want the employees and people to know that we support them and we encourage them. And if they have a complaint, that it can come to us, because that process takes a long time to get to the EEOC. And so, unfortunately, like the city attorney says, this one we may not be able to move forward with, and may not be advised to do so, and we'll have to look into that a little bit more. But going forward, I want all the employees, and hopefully everyone else does, to know that they can stand up and speak, and that we can support them and look at it from our perspective, from the city's perspective, and come together for a common goal that's going to, encourage others to speak up. So if anything, I think we talked about this last meeting, is us getting the complaints or us getting resignation letters, staying in the know a little bit more. I think that's a great opportunity, and if anything, like I said, we move forward with this, and just if there's ever a EEOC complaint filed, if we legally can be notified, I think that's going to keep us in the know a little bit more. Because like I said, I think this one is just going to fall through the cracks, unfortunately, and I hate to have an employee that's around here that feels that way. And if there's ever anything that we could have done differently, I think that's how we move forward with it.
Other commissioners?
I-
Yes.
We just have one more comment, and it's that, and maybe this needs clarification. I know it's a matter of timing, but had this complaint be a valid one, and we still have the same situation where the chief would be, or some other employee, leaves the department, what do we do with that complaint? What do we do with that employee? How do we address that employee?
Well, the city can still investigate. There's nothing that would stop, just because the PFC may not have jurisdiction, doesn't mean that the city, and the city has already, there's been a lot of things behind the scenes. I don't necessarily want to get into the details of what has happened so far, but the city has had, communications with this lieutenant and has looked into this, and the EOC has looked into this. So there's been multiple avenues and multiple eyes on this. And, at this point, it's to the PFC, and really, we've exhausted everything that we can do.
I guess I would double up on what you were saying in that for all police and fire employees, that it's important to bring these things to the PFC and do that as part of the formal complaint process, I think, because I've been on this body for several years, and I did not know about any of the things that, that have transpired. And I think our process is for them to formally, cite a complaint and put that through the process. And like I said, as soon as those come in, we should be getting them.
Yeah, I think I think it's a process problem that we should take a look at and solve with respect to the complaints getting to us right away, legal advice coming to us right away. I mean, I think there's also some of that concern that legal is advising not us, but other people, not us commissioners, before we are making some decisions. And then, so that's a process that we should talk through and work through once we slow down on some of the other things we're doing. But then we also have a timing issue as well that relates to our jurisdiction as a police and fire commission. This complaint is dated July 1st. It was signed on July 4th, it looks like. And that is just the timing, and the attorney is telling us that we just don't have, she's recommending we don't have jurisdiction any longer, which makes sense given our limited role as a police and fire commission. But I hear, and I echo what you're saying, that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be investigated by someone with authority to do so, if it's not been done already.
Is this part of a process, and I'm new to this, bringing an employee in who has formally filed a complaint and just ensuring that they are feeling supported and encouraged? And I'm sure there would be some, obviously, they're not feeling that 100%, but just where we could get to a place that this employee would maybe feel supported. And I'm sure that kind of sounds like maybe what you guys are doing, like I said, touching, I just hate to have an employee out there that is feeling unheard and not supported. And if there's something that we can do, even if it's as simple as listening and helping enforce some of the things some of the changes that may help that employee, I'd like to be able to do that if we can. That may be out of our scope, but, yeah.
I mean, I met with this lieutenant, I think it was 2019, and it did offer, that we would investigate, but he wanted to go the EOC route. So that's where the city then stepped back, and he went that route. He wouldn't put anything in writing so that the city could investigate that. So I can't make employees put things into writing and investigate it. So that's kind of where that situation happened. I agree with you. I don't want employees to feel like they can't come to Human Resources or the PFC with complaints. It's very serious, and we want people to be happy and engaged here. But we can only do so much sometimes with the information that's given to us and the actions that people take. He's still here. Yeah.
And there's a personnel committee for the city
Exactly.
that's made up of elected officials, and they've got a scope of responsibility that's different than our scope of responsibility. And so that's another opportunity and a voice. And, yeah, it's a balance that I think we need to find. You know, this happened a relatively long time ago, and we were just made aware of this and got the complaint, and the city attorney says, too late for us to do anything.
So my question to you then, okay, let's say that, forget about this situation, and again, I'm doing a hypothetical because it could happen. July 1st, a complaint comes, we know the chief is leaving, or whoever employee, in a few days, so he won't be here, but the complaint just comes in within days of that happening. Do we not investigate again in the same situation?
That's what the attorney's saying, because essentially what you might find is that, yeah, this employee's guilty of it, so then what's the discipline? What's your course of action? Are you going to terminate? Are you going to discipline? But you don't have the authority to any longer because that person doesn't work in the department.
Yeah, and that was the second piece, I guess we didn't spell out. There's really 3 pieces of discipline that we can dispel as part of a commission. And none of those are really at our disposal if the chief isn't currently in that role.
Yeah.
So I think that it was coupled with both the timing and with that second piece, and I think that's particularly why this one didn't make sense to pursue. But I guess I agree actually with Tom that we should revisit this process to make sure that we are getting the complaints in a timely manner, and maybe even investigate if there's a secondary path for individuals to put through complaints in a more private and, I don't know. But I think we should just exhaust all of those things to make sure that employees of the police and fire departments know that they can come to the PFC and have a clear path of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I do think that we should take formal action on this one. And I guess putting forth a motion to accept the city attorney's recommendation that we do not take action on this complaint due to both, essentially to the commission's lack of authority, given the timing. All in favor of that motion? Raise your hand and say aye. 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 No nays, motion carries. All right, report from the police department.
I'm going to unmute Matt here.
Is he joining us
There he
via
is.
Zoom?
Yep, he is up there via Zoom.
Hey, Matt.
No.
And then we need a motion to go into closed session, I believe.
Okay. I think I have the right one here. Let me make sure, July 26th. Okay, pursuant to section 19.85, parent 1, parent C of the Wisconsin statutes, the commission will move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically to make hiring recommendations for the Town of Madison Police Officer recruitment and close the recruitment process.
All right, all in favor of moving into closed session, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and closed session. All right, welcome back from closed session into open session. And I would like to make a motion, coming back into open session, to close the recruitment process for the Town of Madison Police Officer recruitment. Do I have a second? I second. All in favor of closing the recruitment process, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Next order of business is report from Human Resources.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I thought it would just be a little bit easier to take a peek at some slides and try to figure out some of the August 3rd and 4th details. So hopefully, it might be a little hard to see, I guess. But basically, we've got some dates coming up here that we need to work through some details. So I'm going to share my slideshow. Oh, thank you. Okay, so We've got the public reception already August 3rd, and that is scheduled for 6:30 PM. We have 2 certified Spanish interpreters that will be on site at the Painters Union. That's over at 5375 King James Way. We will have 24 headsets to accommodate up to 24 Spanish-only speakers. So basically what these interpreters do is they're simultaneously interpreting while the moderator's asking questions. So Fact TV is going to help put the whole audio-visual together, and they'll be coordinating all the technical components and live streaming the public reception. So if someone can't be there in person, it's okay. It will be live, just kind of like our public meetings. And from there, and we're hoping we don't get more than 24 Spanish-only speakers. If we do, that's all that we can accommodate right now. So to put in perspective, I think I heard recently that City of Madison held a event and they had Spanish-only sign up, and they had, I want to say, a handful of people, but then nobody showed up. So I don't know. It's hard to say. You don't know how many people are going to show up and what the needs will be, but we will definitely be able to accommodate, and then we can share the Spanish tape version following the event. Well, that can present a barrier in itself, because now you're requiring people to sign up and RSVP ahead of time, and then are we requiring everybody to do that? And is it doing it on a computer? Is it, just sometimes that can be a barrier in itself. So if we just kind of leave it open and whomever is interested can come, sometimes can be a little bit easier. Yeah, we'll have 2.
One would be able to interpret with the extra additional.
Right, that's
I mean, I
quite
know it'd be in the
possible.
same room, but, and we're worried about the noise volume.
There's a
but-
ton of space, so there's even breakout rooms, so there's
Yeah.
going to be that possibility to accommodate more that come. Yep. And then we're going to have some food and refreshments. So we're going to be partnering with Little John's Kitchen. Oh, sorry. We'll be partnering with Little John's Kitchen to provide coffee, lemonade, and water, along with appetizers for, we're going to shoot for up to 75 people. So we're hoping that will be enough. How does the commission feel? Do you feel like 75 is a little too much or not enough for a number of people that will actually come to the public reception?
How many people came for the city administrator?
About 35.
And that was closer to COVID concerns.
It
I
was
forget when
closer to
that was.
COVID, and it was held here and just different.
I would think, I would hope.
I think more than
Yes, sir.
35 we'll get.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So given that, I mean, we're doubling up on that number, so
okay,
that seems, I don't know, to me, that seems reasonable. I don't know about for others.
okay. And then from there, here's the layout of the evening. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to look to see, okay, what did we do for city administrator and what might we do for the police chief? So for the city administrator, we had 4 finalists. Each of them was given 4 questions ahead of time to prepare. So they already knew, a few days ahead of time what those questions were going to be. It was the same question for all finalists, and we started with a different finalist for each question. So everybody had an opportunity to go first. They each had 3 minutes to answer the question, but they actually didn't know that they had 3 minutes until the evening of the event. I was able to get some feedback from Chief Brecklin, who is one of the finalists for the position, and he said it was helpful to have the questions ahead of time. It would have been even more helpful to know that he had 3 minutes for each question, so he could have really rehearsed, right, and had it ready to go. But really, the big issue was, he was here until a little after 9 o'clock at night. So not knowing exactly when is this going to end, because for him it was a really long day. Think about it, the candidates will be here meeting with the PFC for an interview. They'll be here for a tour, meeting with the administrator and the mayor. So it's a long day. So if we can make sure that if it's 6:30 to 8:30, we actually stick to that. So we have maybe moderated questions, and then we can open it for an informal meet and greet. That's something for us to figure out tonight. So we'll come back to that. And yeah, I just highlighted some issues with the last reception. So again, the time commitment wasn't very clear. It was unclear exactly how much time there was for the informal meet and greet versus the moderated Q&A. And then also, we opened questions to the audience at the last part of it. And fortunately, we had suggestions that all of the candidates could answer. It wasn't like somebody had a question just for Chad, and so that's the concern that we might run into, is that if we open it up at the very end, we may get some questions that maybe they want, just one person to answer. And so there's value in obviously getting the questions ahead of time from the public, their ideas, their thoughts. But then, you could still have that informal meet and greet where people can just go up to the finalist after the questions and introduce themselves and ask some of those questions. We just want to make sure we stay within the time parameters so that our candidates really know, I'm done at 8:30. So. And so another idea that Some Prairie did that worked out really well is they had a meet and greet for their police employees, and this was before the public reception, so it was specifically just for the department, so that police employees could ask questions of the finalists and have a chance to meet them. So we could potentially do something like that if the commission's on board with that.
Let me just backtrack a little bit.
Absolutely.
So August 3rd, the first event that they will have that day, what would that be? The interviews?
So, yep, let me take you to that slide here. Schedule. So here's the potential schedule here. So we need the PFC to meet for a 4-hour block on August 3rd. So whether that's morning, around the lunch hour, afternoon, the ideal would be we have 1-hour interview with each candidate that the commission has in closed session. And then we also need each finalist to meet with the city administrator and the mayor for a combined interview, so, a 30-minute interview. And then they're going to have a city tour, probably about an hour or so, with Lieutenant Hartwig and our fire chief. And then a 30-minute tour with our Lieutenant Baumkamp and our police administrative services manager for maybe about 30 minutes total. So. And then following, they've got the public reception. So whenever the PFC meets that day, it definitely shouldn't be 6:30 to 8:30. We know that's designated for the public reception, and we want all of you there if you can make it. So we really just need a 4-hour block that day for all of you to meet. So I don't know if you have your calendars handy, and if do you prefer mornings, afternoons? I've heard already that afternoon seems to work better, if that's a possibility. So we could do something right after lunch, and that would be like basically the end of their day. We could start it with interviews with the city administrator and the mayor, and then the tour, and then end with the PFC interviews and public reception. So any thoughts about time? Can everyone make an early afternoon 4-hour block of time on August 3rd?
I could after 12. No.
After 12? Okay.
So can I. I've blocked off the afternoon, so.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Stina? Okay. Ron? All right, perfect.
Do any of the commissioners have strong feelings about morning versus afternoon? I mean, I think as a natural flow of this, it kind of seems like either the city tour or the mayor and city administrator interviews first.
Mm-hmm.
We could start maybe at 1 o'clock,
Yep.
12:30 or 1 o'clock, something like that. That would get us to 4 or 5 at 4 hours each.
Yep.
And then that would give them a little break, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
between 6:30 and 8:30 for the public appearance.
Yep. Unless you wanted to have the police department public reception, the police department come and meet them before the public reception.
Yeah, I guess I do, so we should probably just talk about that as long as we're talking about this. I do really like the idea of having the police department having at least 30 minutes to sit down with them and ask direct questions. I mean, they're going to be potentially their direct reports. And I guess the other piece is that, can we be there for that interaction as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that would add, for me anyways, quite a bit, just to see those interactions. Both the questions and the answers, and just really the body language and the whole thing, so.
And I wonder, would it all be like the 4 of the finalists with anyone from the department who wants to come? Or would they meet individually with
Yeah,
the
that's a good question.
officers?
So
I don't know which- I don't-
that's a good question. I think Some Prairie just had them all up at the table, and then police department employees, I think they probably had some questions, some targeted questions, and then it was just more informal where they could go on up and meet with the finalists.
Yeah, I would like to put some structure around it, so it doesn't become, 1 or 2 people,
Yep.
making statements rather than interacting with the panelists to the detriment of everyone else in the room.
Yeah, and I completely agree with the structure. I think things should be phrased as questions, first of all. If we're going to open it up and allow them just to come up with ad hoc questions. Or the other piece, we could also ask that, the department, the police folks, get the questions that they would like to ask, and then present those and just have them listen to the responses. That's another, I guess, avenue. I like the give and take, though, aspect, if we can pull it off. I hear what you're saying, though, in regards to, I don't necessarily want it to be one person either commandeering the entire conversation or something like that. Yep.
So this will be like a presentation again.
Well, not a presentation, but like another mini public reception, but specifically for police employees. Sun Prairie Police Department really enjoyed having that opportunity before just being part of the entire public reception or part of the community public reception. It's an idea for police employees to have a special time with the finalists.
Right, I thought maybe just to say hi, hello, if, something, but do you think that there might be some, serious questions and they'll be addressing everybody, or?
Well, I think some of that's how we structure this. Like Tom was saying, there should be some structure to it. I just don't know exactly what that should be. I kind of like the idea of a,
Just
question,
meet and
answer, and a give and take sort of formally. But I think that's really up to us how we want to do that.
I know it's obviously time sensitive and trying to piece it together. I like the idea of a group of officers and one future, candidate. I think that interaction would leave, it'd be more efficient with just the flow of it. And it does give the opportunity for them to have that one-on group interaction. But again, that's only 15 minutes, and I think it's very important to the police officers to have this opportunity. I know in a couple of the coffees I've had that they express this want, and it's important to them, and so I definitely want to value, put that at the top of everything. But is 15 minutes enough? So what can, maybe, I feel like maybe that's, you consider 3 minutes per answer. We're going to have to really groom it to make sure, I know like an informal, kind of shoot from the hip, but I think we're going to have to, if you have questions, bring them to, HR, and if we get more questions for one candidate than the other, then we'll have to kind of plan accordingly. But I think making sure that we're prepared and we don't waste the time and it's valuable, I think is really important.
How did Sun Prairie organize it?
That's a great question. I don't have those answers for you right now. I'm curious, could we ask them to just, one question for the police department employees, why do you want to be the police chief of this department? And then that's the one question that all 4 of them answer in front of the whole group, and then we just let them have the informal meet and greets where they can walk on up to each other, or up to the finalists and ask some questions informally. That way we're not monopolizing the time with questions and answers, where some people might just want to go up and have a conversation with the person.
Yeah, and I guess we could limit that to 3 minutes again or something as a
Right.
response. That would be 12 to 15 minutes that you would have front to back. And then if we did it for a 30-minute segment, that would give 15 minutes for sort of informal conversation.
Right.
Yeah, I like
like
that
that.
idea, because this day seems so packed with stuff. They're coming out of our interviews, getting ready to go to another, event with the public. I would try to make it as light as possible. So I would like that idea. Why do you want to be the chief? They could answer, just like you said, and let everybody mingle and say hi and whatever.
And if we did that from 6 to 6:30, let's just say, because we wanted 2 hours for the rest of it, and throwing times out there, this isn't policy. But if we did that, the officers would be there. I guess, would they stay?
Yeah, they would be more than welcome to stay.
I would
Yeah,
certainly want
absolutely.
them to.
Yep.
But then, also that, I guess my 2 cents is, I think it's great to have the officers there and have community members come in and just have it be a bigger participation for the rest of the session.
Yeah, we can stay,
Yeah.
unless they get a call if they're on duty.
Right. Okay, very good. That's very helpful. So then the next day, we need to get all of you convened one last time. And this is to actually discuss, how did the reception go? How did interviews go? You'll hear from the folks that gave the tour, and just, their input, so that you can actually make a decision on who you want to further background. So not who you're going to hire, so to speak, but who you would like the city to move forward on backgrounds. It might be more than one person. You might think you have two really strong candidates. So in that closed session meeting on August 4th, that's where we would be looking to get that name or names. And so any time that you're available on August 4th, and that would be a closed session meeting, and maybe an hour, hour and a half.
But Jeff, you said 1, to start at 1? That's what you were talking about.
I threw out 1 o'clock. It seemed like a good time.
Oh, wait, we
If
have
in
to,
fact-
never mind. I confused the meeting from the 3rd with the 4th.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The 3rd is the one that would start at 1.
Yep, the third will be 1, and we'll do
Okay.
4 one-hour interviews. So we'll be finished by 5. That gives them time to get over to get some
Right.
respite,
So
and,
this is the 4th now, I get it.
Yep.
You have to eat at
Okay.
some point.
yeah.
Water.
And then the next day, do you prefer to meet in the morning? Do you prefer to meet around lunch hour, the afternoon,
After lunch, after 12.
after lunch, after 12? Okay.
I would prefer normal meeting time if we could.
Mm-hmm.
I would appreciate that.
Would that work? Wednesday, the 4th at 5 o'clock?
And it is so we could have a meeting in here or in, down the hall. It could
Yep.
be, it's going to be a closed session, but
Yep.
I assume it'll be recorded and it'll be broadcast just like all the rest of them will
Right.
be.
It'll be just like all the other meetings.
Right,
Yep.
but it'll essentially be that. But we will have time for the public to come in and voice their opinion as well.
So that's a good conversation. So the public reception is meant to be that time for the public to come on in, meet the finalists, but ultimately the commission is making the hiring decision. If you wanted input from the community on who they thought the right candidate was for the position, we'd have to figure out what that would look like and where we're going to put that in the timeline.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I brought that up is every single meeting that we have call to order. We have a very structured process,
Oh,
right? And one of those things is public appearances for non-agenda items. And so, right, and I don't know that we want to discard that just because of this. And I think we want to keep it in place. And if people want to come and they want to voice, I think that we limit that to 2 minutes or something
Yep.
like that anyways. So
Yep.
I think that we certainly would invite people in to come and speak their mind.
So August 4th, we would look to make sure people know that, hey, this is your opportunity if you wanted to come to the
I think
meeting.
it's publicly noticed, just like
Yep.
24 hours, same rules as we adhere to all the other meetings. That's my 2 cents anyway.
Agree.
And I mean, it could be a bit silly, right? Because we just read it and then nobody's here and then we just move on to closed session. But at the same time, I think we keep the same format.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Very good, okay.
So what
and then-
time would that meeting be at 4? It's a regular time, but I'm not
On,
sure.
on the 4th?
Yeah,
Oh, yes, at
on-
5 PM.
I would say
5.
5 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Perfect, okay, that's very helpful. And so I'm going to end my slideshow here. I'm going to go back because I had in here to talk about the public reception questions. So I was able to get some recommendations for public reception, and we had some submissions on our website. So as you know, on the PFC page, they're accepting questions. So if the community or public has some ideas of public reception questions, they can submit those there. And so these are some of the questions that Rosa had submitted as well. So how do you see the role of police in responding to mental health and drug-related crisis?
So are we supposed to be discussing this in closed session at this
The
point?
PFC interview questions we
Okay.
should do in closed session,
Right.
since that is a competitive process, but the public reception, we can talk about that in open session
Okay,
and just kind of, and see if any of these resonate and if we want to give them to the candidates ahead of time too.
Well, now the candidates have them.
Well,
If we talk about them in closed session, we probably want to decide to do that now.
Yep.
do you want to give, and these are just ideas, but these aren't the ones we're going to ask. I guess the first question for the commission, do you want to give the candidates the public reception questions ahead of time? So that they have time to prepare and, time their responses. So we let them know right away, they have 3 minutes, they're going
I
to be
see,
getting X
yes.
questions.
I say yes, I think we follow suit of the city administration. I mean, if we can get a policy in place, again, that would just keep us more efficient.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think the city administrative process worked out well, but still leave room at the end for questions they have not prepared for, so we can get the experience of them answering questions off the cuff.
How do we want to get those questions that they haven't prepared for? Are those ones that we're just going to have in our back pocket? Or are we going to ask people to come to the reception with some, and then maybe a couple of commission members kind of sift through those submissions to see which ones are not exactly like the ones we just asked? Or
Have we received any questions from the,
Yeah, yep, they're on here. So the bottom 3 questions are ones that were submitted by the public.
by the public? Okay.
Right.
But then you're also talking about people that maybe have not submitted any questions?
Who might just be coming to the
The
reception
reception.
and then have a question on the spot.
Yeah, because for the city administrator, there are the planned questions, and then the moderator just asked the people sitting in the crowd, do you have any questions? And 4 or 5 people, I think, maybe asked questions of all the candidates, and each candidate went, answered the question.
And I guess, were there any, I guess it seems like that questions from the community in that sort of ad hoc sense should be sort of directed at all of the candidates and not just one.
Right, so all of the candidates should answer the same question.
So I think maybe it would be helpful perhaps, though, if we had the, and we certainly don't want to quelch anybody's enthusiasm, but it would be helpful for the moderator to actually say that.
Yeah.
Just say, we're going to open this up so that people can ask questions, but it's important that we phrase the questions so that everybody, towards all the candidates, so they all have an opportunity to answer. And on the website, does it actually say that that will be part of the process?
So I'll take you to our website, just so you can take a peek at our,
I was there today and I didn't.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll
Well,
take you there.
the announcement was out there today, so I went and looked at the announcement.
Okay.
I guess my point in asking that is it may be helpful for people to actually formulate those questions rather than just doing off the cuff. Off the cuff's good, but if you know that you're going to have the opportunity to potentially ask something, you may do a little prep in regards to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Here is the PFC page right now. So this is good for all of you to know too. So Ned Hartwig has been really wonderful in updating all of our flyers and media posts to just make something look really nice. So he helped with designing this page. So it really gives you a snapshot of who the 4 finalists are. And then if you scroll down here, it talks about the public reception details. And it says, we invite you to submit a question here. So when they click on that, it takes them right to where it says, please enter into the box below the question that you believe the Police and Fire Commission should ask of the police chief candidates at the public forum. So it doesn't guarantee that that's the question we'll ask, but it gives people an opportunity to submit whatever they would like. And then
that's
going
great.
back to the PFC page, we have a nice little timeline here. So if anyone's curious about where we're at in the process, we're kind of halfway through, a little more than halfway through. So we'll be going to, all of those steps later on. So we kind of try to keep this updated as we're moving through. And then we have our interim police chief announcement and more information about the actual police chief position. And then all of your contact information is down here as well. Or the PFC's contact information. So I'll stop sharing this.
I think that looks great. He did a fantastic job.
He did, yeah.
Very, very nice.
Very good. So at this point then, we just need to figure out what the questions will be, and then we could still open it up, just like we did the administrator, and open it up, as long as the moderator can indicate that, hey, whatever question you ask has to be for everybody, and not just in one specific candidate.
So how many questions are we?
So we had 4 questions. It worked out really well for the administrator because we had 4 finalists. So we have 4 finalists here. So if we can at least come up with 4 questions. The public can still submit questions. So I don't know if we want to necessarily choose the exact 4 today in case we still get some yet this week. But these are the ones that have been submitted so far.
And these are all, or just the bottom 3 are from?
Just the bottom 3 are from the community, and then Rosa submitted the top 4.
Okay. No, I think we need four.
We need 4 questions, yeah, yeah. And we still have people that will probably submit some more.
I wouldn't mind a broad question about the vision that the applicants or candidates have for police and law enforcement in Fitchburg. Just a broad question that gives them an opportunity to speak broadly about the experience they've had and tie it into the intent that they might have going forward in Fitchburg.
I think the staffing, just going off, again, my conversations with the police officers, I think staffing, I think that's a very important question to them. And I would be curious to see how they answered that.
And when you say staffing, do you mean
Staffing shortages.
staffing shortages specifically?
Boots on the
Or-
ground, the need
yeah.
for them.
Yeah. Especially with the, and maybe the annexation of the town. That might be something that's, I mean, this chief is gonna be in charge of that. That's a big, that's all new territory essentially.
Well, I think, in my opinion, of course, I would like the one on the enforcing of federal immigration laws. We do have per capita the largest Latino community here in Fitchburg, and I think that's an important, at least in my opinion. The police engagement with youth, especially after I saw the presentations regarding the car thefts and all that, and we're talking about a hub and providing a teen center. I would like to hear the chief talk to the community about how important that would be in their involvement in that.
It's not just from the presentations, also that there's a fair bit of that from the or from the survey.
Exactly.
And not just directed at youth, but I think a lot of the, what do they call it, smaller crime, break into the garages and those kinds of things.
And those are usually youth, yeah.
So could we broaden that one a little bit? Well, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying about, like directed towards youth, but,
We might get some more ideas when we go through the PFC questions, because I also had a lot of submissions for PFC interview questions, and we can look at the ones that were asked last time too. So we might see something that we want to ask at the public reception when we go through those. So these are just some thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, I like the question regarding staffing, and it did come up, with the meetings. And what I would be, if we ask that question, I would be looking to see if this individual can come up with creative ideas to respond to the call for service, knowing that we have staff shortages. And by that I mean, and it came up in the questions, in the meetings, if we can do self-reporting, which is one thing that can do. If they are, go through the calls for service and see which of those could be self-reporting, which of those could be dropped, especially when you have an emergency going on. So that will be the kind of responses that I would be looking for this chief, and that the community needs to know that we don't have 20 officers out in the streets at any given time, and all the work that they have to address during their shifts.
Okay.
I like the idea of maybe going through in closed session all these questions and maybe coming back to what we ask in the public reception, what we ask as commissioners in the closed interviews.
Okay.
So I guess I might suggest we table this until we have those other suggested questions as well.
When is that gonna be?
Oh, right now.
Yeah.
Just table it to the end of the meeting,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
because we're going to close session.
Okay.
I guess I would just add to that I like that idea a lot, mainly because I went through the questions that have been asked as far as the panel interviews, and I think that we should definitely hit some of the topics that we've talked to officers about and that haven't been asked yet.
Okay.
That sounds like a great plan. Yep.
So going into closed session now?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Okay, pursuant to section 19.85, paren 1, paren E, Wisconsin statutes, the commission will move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee for which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically, to determine the interview process, the interview questions to ask during the PFC interviews with the finalist in a competitive recruitment process.
We have a second to the motion for a closed session.
I second.
All in favor of going into closed session, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, welcome back. We are back in open session. And I would like to make a motion to approve the finalist questions for the PFC to interview the candidates for police chief. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor of approving the finalist questions, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, and questions are approved. And returning back to open session and carrying out that action item, we only have one left, which is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
And a second on that?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning? Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye.